It doesn't matter what people say or what people think about me, because at the end of the day, I'm honoring the Lord. I truly believe that out of the abundance the heart speaks, so out of your action is God's love and is his character. A failure isn't a reflection on me and who God's made me to be. It's a circumstance and I'm going to move through it, but not getting stuck on it like it's my identity. A lot of times God puts us in spots you think you're unqualified for, you think you're not good enough for, and that's oftentimes when you know you're in the right spot.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inspired Authority. Today, I have a very special guest, Gracie Formsma.
Hi.
So, Gracie is the co-founder of a brand called Love Gives. Love Gives was founded by Gracie and her sibling, Drew. It was built on a very simple belief. Love isn't just something that we feel, it's something that we give, which is absolutely beautiful. Through faith, generosity, and everyday acts of kindness, Love Gives is helping a new generation live with purpose and make meaningful impact in the lives of others. Gracie, we are so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so exciting.
So, Gracie, we need to tell everyone who you are behind Love Gives and being a student and all of that. Who is Gracie?
Well, that is a loaded question, but I would start with I feel like Gracie, above anything else, is a child of God. But I think what's really cool about just the life that God's given me is I think it's so based on just like the things I've gone through and just the places I've been in and, you know, the different seasons I've walked through. I think identity is really honestly rooted in who you believe you are. I think something for me is I had to go on the self-exploration of, okay, who does Jesus say I am? Because the world can tell me this, I can go to perfection, I can go to trying to please other people, but it's like Gracie is a child of the Lord and somebody that is going to do big things, not of this world, but truly for the kingdom. And so I think that is honestly what I try to live out of. I think there are days that it's so hard, or I go to perfection, or feeling like this or that, whatever. But the reality is just going back to, okay, who has God said I am, and what has he given me, and like, what are the things that I love most, you know?
That is absolutely beautiful. Actually, I think you're the first woman on the podcast that's not a mom. So to hear you really talk about being a child of the Lord is just so beautiful and so unique. And I really love that. Unique to my guests that have been on the show. Okay, so now we need to know the story behind Love Gives. How did it start? What brought you there? Like, tell us everything about Love Gives and Gracie co-founding that brand.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love telling this story because it's just such a beautiful representation of how God took me from like somebody who never thought I'd be in this position to do something like this to now be doing it. Like, it's just so beautiful. But to start at the beginning, so Love Gives is part of a bigger nonprofit initiative called I Like Giving. And I Like Giving teaches people to love God, love others, and live generously. And then through that is a sector called Generous Family. And Generous Family provides kids' books, curriculums, and different things to inspire the next generation to truly live in like good morals and have good curriculums that they're being set on a path of truly walking with the Lord. And so out of that is Love Gives. And so the beautiful part about Love Gives is that all of the proceeds go directly toward Generous Family, which provides kids' books and different resources and things to families of like foster families, military families, and just people that don't have the means to buy good education and things that will inspire the next generation. And so all that to say, the way that Love Gives started was actually my brother came to me and he was like, Gracie, like, I have this really good idea. Like, I have something that I think we should do together. And he had made like a Love Gives hat. Our first rendition of one was like actually atrocious, but we had like 5 made. And so my family, we would all just wear them around. And so there was one day that Drew and I were actually at a Generous Family conference. We were giving away kids' books to grandparents and things so they could give them to their grandchildren. And I was wearing one of our first Love Gives hats. Like, it looked so rickety. And my brother was like, Gracie, I really think we should start like actually a movement around this. Not just a hat brand, not just a piece of merch, but truly a movement around what the gospel is. You know what I mean? And I was like, that's a great idea, Drew. Love it. I'm not sure I'll do that. Like, I'm busy. I'm finishing school still, all these things. And a few minutes later, this like older gentleman had walked past us and was like, I love your hat. And I was like, oh my gosh, here we go. And so, of course, the older brother was like, Gracie, like, I don't even have to say anything. Like, God clearly is already speaking to you. And I was like, oh gosh, here we go. And so I really went to prayer a lot about it because I was like, I just don't know. Like, I don't feel like I'm equipped for that. I love marketing. I love Pinterest, anything like that. But I was like, I just don't think I'm the person to do that. And so, honestly, a big thing that held me back was fear of failure, being a disappointment, or letting my brother down, letting just like other people down, or being embarrassed about it. And the cool thing is, over time, I started praying about it, fasting, and all the things. And I really felt like this is what I was supposed to do. And so I was like, okay, Drew, like, I'll do one shoe. I'll do our first ever drop, which was this khaki hat that I'm wearing, and then a dark green one. And so that was our first shoe that we ever came out with. And I was like, okay, I'll just do one. And so I did a whole like inspo board. We got models, Drew's friends, but we had some people come. We got a photographer, and I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I looked kind of like an idiot. But it was so beautiful, and it was so fun, and I was like, "Why do I feel so much peace doing this?" Like, "Okay, like, where is this gonna go from here?" And honestly, I feel like God honestly didn't give me a choice. Like, it was like I said yes, and it just went. As soon as we did that first launch, we had filmed in April of last year, so it's only been around for, like, a year and a few months. But April of 2025 is when we did that first shoot, and then we launched in May. And we sold out within a matter of a month and a half, 2 months. And Drew and I were just like, "Oh my gosh, like, okay, we gotta get locked in. Like, what are we gonna come out with? What are we gonna do?" And so it's been really cool because Drew and I have been traveling a lot. We've traveled to different revivals around the country at different colleges. We've been doing different podcasts, and we've done just different things with RWC, a running community around the country. So we partnered with some really cool people and have just done some really amazing things within it. And what's so beautiful about Love Gives is it's not about Drew and I, and we really don't try to put like our names out there much because it's like, this isn't about us. This is about something so much greater. And it's about truly spreading the love of Jesus, like through what we wear. And what I love about it is the front of the hat says Love Gives. It doesn't say Jesus gives. It doesn't say Jesus loves. The point of it is to show God's love through our actions and who we are, not just wearing a piece of clothing that says the Lord's name. Because I truly believe that out of the abundance the heart speaks. So out of your action is God's love and is his character. And so that's truly what we've built it around. And what's really fun too is like Drew, it's like Gracie, I want this to be something that like we're both proud of. Not prideful, but in a way of just being like, okay, we worked really hard on something, like, and we want to honor the Lord with it, but being proud of it at the same time. Can coexist. I really do believe it can. And so it's been special for us to really create like a lifestyle around Love Gives, not just making it, oh, it's a hat brand or it's a part of Generous Family, but instead of lifestyle, where we collect stories and we are able to retell truly like what God's doing and just the different stories that come in because they're just so beautiful. So that's a little piece of it.
That was so beautiful, and it's so beautiful that you get to do it with your brother. It's
Mhm.
also really special that not only was he encouraging you to start this brand,
Absolutely.
but you heard God telling you, you need to do this. I am just so inspired by that. I think calling comes from God, and we don't all, it's hard to hear it. Like, let's just
Yeah.
be honest. So what I wanted to ask you was, you had spoke about in the past, like as you were growing up, it took you time to find your way to the Lord and to Jesus and to really finding who you were within religion. Can you share a little bit about that story? Because I had shared with you before we even started recording that, it's only been over the last few years that I started finding my relationship with God, and it's changed the way that I live. It changed the way that I feel. It helped with a lot of my anxiety and depression. Like, my story and how I got to God is what got me to where I am today. So I'm just so curious to hear your story and how you were able to get closer to God and ultimately hear his calling.
And I love that you shared that with me because It's such a beautiful part about a relationship with the Lord is it doesn't matter how long, but it matters truly what you're doing with it. And I grew up in a Christian house. I went to Christian school, but I really was lost in my relationship with Jesus. I chased all the wrong things, and I really looked to other people to give me the approval that I needed. And it really wasn't until late in high school where I kind of had a crossroads of staying at the school I was at or transferring. And I remember where I was so like unhappy with where I was. I honestly had thoughts of just like depressive thoughts. I truly was not myself at all. I was super introverted, was shy, like all these things. And I just remember feeling like I just believe there's something bigger for me. Like I really believe that God has something more. And so during that time, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna pray. Like I feel like I need to transfer. I don't know what to do. And it's so silly to say like that a high school switch really was what did it for me, but it was. Like I literally heard God say, "You need to change schools." And that was the first time I've ever heard God's audible voice. And it is such a silly circumstance, but that ultimately changed my life and my trajectory with the Lord. And what's so beautiful about it is like I was just so lost and I was broken and I had been hurt and all these things. But over that time of transferring schools, God really let me release everything from my past. It was this beautiful time where I really was diving deep into, okay, who is Jesus and who does he want me to be? And so over that time, I really began to find like, who's Gracie and like, who is the girl that God wants me to be? And so what's so special about that whole journey was it really led me to fall into a deep love with Jesus before a guy or before trying to have this big audience or people that looked at me or being whatever. It was truly finding a love in Jesus. And I believe truly that's why like the Lord gave me such a heart for love gives because that's what it's all about is finding that love in Jesus first because that was something I just didn't have. It didn't click for me for so long. I remember thinking, I don't understand how people spend time with God. I don't get it. That sounds like a task. I didn't enjoy it. I just didn't understand it until God truly got me to my wits' end in my own life. And I was broken down on the floor. And God called me by name and picked me up and helped me start my life. Like, truly. Because I was walking in a completely different direction. And I have no idea where I would be if I didn't if God didn't see me, like, if he really didn't see me in that moment, I don't know where I'd be, but that's such the beautiful thing about Jesus is he saves in that moment, the moment when you're like, "I literally don't know what I'm gonna do next." And so, ultimately, that and just over time of just really finding who God is and what my identity is, and yeah.
Yeah. When you release it all to the Lord, that's when he really starts to come and play. And
Absolutely.
I gives me chills. That's so beautiful. So Gracie, starting this brand and again continuing to leverage this brand in your life and where you're going next in, after school, I guess. How has this brand impacted your life? How has starting this business impacted your life?
Oh my gosh, it's impacted my life so much. Like, I have no idea what God's gonna do, like, in 10 years, 20 years down the road in my life, but, like, this has been such a pivotal time in my life, like, genuinely. I think, honestly, the few things I've learned that are probably been the biggest changes in my life was releasing control and realizing that things don't happen the way I want or don't happen the way I plan to or has shipments get backed up or, oh my gosh, our manufacturer screwed them up and they're a little bit smaller and people are freaking out. Like, I have had to just go, okay, Lord, like, this is not me. This is not about me. This is not about what I could do, but it is about truly walking in what you've called me to do. I think another thing that I've really learned is being okay with failure. I have always struggled with that, and it didn't really click to me that I struggled with that so much until I started this because I failed a lot, and there have been a lot of moments that things haven't gone, like I mentioned earlier, like the way I anticipated. And in those moments, it's when I have to go, okay, a failure isn't a reflection on me and who God's made me to be. It's a circumstance and I'm going to move through it, but not getting stuck on it like it's my identity. That has been something that I've really had to work through. And then also, too, letting go of what people think of me. Like, I have to post the social media stuff and I literally like hate doing that and I cringe at it. But I have to just go, it's not about me, and God's put me here, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to do what God's called me to do. Regardless if I look silly or if I look dumb, it doesn't matter because I'm doing it for the Lord, not for my own gain, not for the sales, for the views, for anything. Like, genuinely, my heart is sold out for Jesus, and that's what I want to live out of, not out of care what people think or if it does well or if it doesn't.
Growing up, I think a lot of people are taught that failure is bad, and it's actually a big part of life. And so I didn't learn that till I was much older. I wish I had learned it sooner, that it was just like it's actually part of the process. And the other quote that I do really like is, you only fail if you give up. So there's going to be bumps
Truly.
along the way. I love what you said. It's not a failure, it's a circumstance. Is
Yeah.
that what you said?
Pretty much, yeah. Like, it's something you have to walk through. It's not your identity. Failure isn't, oh my gosh, you're a bad person. You're not good enough. You're not this. That's not what it is. I think that was something I got tied into so much because I was like, oh my gosh, like, I just let Drew down. I just let it all just go to waste. Like, I don't know what I just did. And it's like, that's just not the reality. It's a part of the process.
So, Gracie, you talked a lot about learning things throughout this process. Is there anything that you actually had to give up in order to make space for this business? I think we're all very busy. You're a student finishing next year, so I'm sure there's a lot of things on your plate outside of Love Gives. What did you have to put aside or give up in order to really build this brand?
Yeah, honestly, a lot. I think a big one was just realizing, okay, like, I'm at college, right? I'm finishing that. It's great. I know I'm supposed to be there. But for me, it was really orienting my priorities because for me, I'm a person that loves to do things with excellence and do things well. And I don't like to just kind of throw things under the rug. And so for me, like, when I started college, it's just like that was my priority, that and friends and, diving deeper into my relationship with Jesus. But like, as this came on, it was a whole new thing that I had to navigate. And so I really had to sit down with myself and go, okay, top priority, of course, is becoming the best version of Gracie, spending time with Jesus, relationships. That's got to be priority. That has to be. And then from that, it's work and then it's school, which some people might not like how that sounds, but for me, it had to be that way because, I mean, my degree is pretty much what I'm doing, but it's also one of those things where I had to go, okay, what's important to me and where am I going to be putting my time? And I'm still learning that. I feel like that is something we don't ever stop learning of, okay, what am I going to do or how am I going to use my time? But honestly, I saw Love Gives something not as something that would disintegrate in 4 years when I left college, but something that had a lasting impact. And so with that lasting impact, I was like, I really believe that this is where God wants my time. And I felt so much peace doing it. And there was definitely a lot of travel early on, traveling to different college revivals, and we were going here and there and speaking at different things. But I had to realize, like, this is what God's put me to do. And even though it's costing me, I have to do it. And that was something truly that just fueled me to go because I knew it wasn't my own selfish ambition, but it was really trying to chase, God, what do you have for me? Because that, at the end of my life, like, that's what I want to have, is I want to stand before the Lord and say, I gave you what I could. I did what I could, but not get caught in the, oh, well, I might have not had my priorities straight or whatever.
I'm curious. You had mentioned having a bit of a hard time in high school at one point, and now you're in college building what is an incredible brand. Have you had any struggles with friends now that you are, again, having to give up time with maybe building some of those relationships and prioritizing, God and work and school? Have you had any struggles with friends now that you're building this incredible brand and you don't have as much time to maybe build those relationships?
Yeah, I would say it definitely looks different than it used to, but something I really had to walk through and that I've learned a lot throughout this process is having a few friends that I rely on and letting them in. I was really scared to let people in of like really what I was doing, what was going on, because I didn't want to appear like, oh, look at me or oh, look at what I'm doing, because that's just not my heart. And I'd been hurt a lot in high school friendships of jealousy, and everyone knows the girl drama, a nightmare, and all the things. And so I really had a hard time opening out to people about really what was going on, or even my struggles of how I was feeling, or the early days of starting this. And having some anxious thoughts, traveling and figuring out school and doing all these different things. But when I let a few trusted people in, I really noticed my life started to change. Because instead of looking at people of like, oh, they're mad, they're disappointed that I couldn't, go to this or spend time with them, it was like, no, they encouraged what I was doing. And instead of it being like, well, you're never around, it was like, hey, how can I come alongside you? And then, of course, my part in it was like when I was around or when I did have that time being so intentional. And like I mentioned earlier, that's why my phone's always on Do Not Disturb because I'm like, when I'm with people, I want to be so present and I want to be so honoring to their time and just like the people I love. Like I want to be so just available and present and just in those moments. So,
That's really good feedback in terms of when you find the people that you can trust and
yeah.
letting them in and having them as a resource. Growing up, I had a hard time with like feeling supported or feeling
Yeah.
like I could go big or do like in the environment I grew up in, it was kind of like you always took the safe road and like you didn't take a lot of risks. And like the people that were showing up on social media wasn't, I had like Facebook and MySpace back in my day, but social media started coming
Yeah.
around in college. And the people that posted, it was like, oh, like it was embarrassing. It was weird. It was different. It's so different the way people are growing up today. But what I can tell you is it wasn't until I became an adult and I moved to California that I started making friends that were extremely supportive and if not, pushed me to
Yeah.
do things outside of my comfort zone. I never really had that before. And I can tell you that is why I am where I am because I had people that truly did see what I was capable of, truly did support me, loved me, and would help me no matter what. And so I think finding those friends is really important. And sometimes you have to leave the environment that you grew up in order to find them.
Yeah. So true.
So, Gracie, throughout this process, have there been any doors that have closed on you that you feel like, oh, it makes sense that I didn't do that because you were able to make space for now what you're building today?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. For sure. I think honestly, growing up, I always, especially when I really found a relationship with Jesus, I always felt like God was going to do something with my life. And I didn't know what it was, but I remember just feeling, and I have no idea where it's going to go. And I don't know if it's love gives or something else, but I just remember always feeling like, God, you're going to do something. I just feel it, but I don't know what. And I remember going to college, in high school, I like did all the things. I was so try hard. It was ridiculous. Played tennis, did all the things, was in every leadership thing you could think of. And so going to college, I was like, oh, got it, got to do the same thing. And so, which is so funny because like the rat race never stops. It's like you need to get into college and then you need a job. It's just like, forget it. And so going to college, I was like, okay, like what am I going to be involved in or whatever? And so I remember I applied for all this stuff and I go to school in Alabama. And so for me, I was like, okay, being out of state, coming from California, like I feel like I would be a good person, to show people around the school or do this or whatever, like all the things. And, I got denied from everything, like completely everything. And I was like, what? Like I actually had an identity crisis because I was like, okay, I don't think I'm the perfect person for this, but like, I was like, what? I was so confused. Like we all have been like, what? And so through that process of literally getting denied from anything I tried for, God opened this door for me. And at the moment, I didn't see it as like, oh, I'm gonna like do love gives. It wasn't like this magic door I was gonna walk through, but it was more of like, well, I could push toward this. That's kind of what it felt like. It wasn't like, who love gives with like shiny letters. Like it was just like, Drew and I don't even know what this is. And I had another opportunity through just another thing in Alabama. And I was like deciding between love gives and that. And I was like, okay, like I don't know. But at the end of the day, it was like all of those no's. I could have not done what I'm doing today with if I went and did those things. Like I remember we had one of our biggest launches the day that if I got a position at my school, I would have had to be there all day, same day as my launch. I was like, I couldn't have a year ago, if I knew this then and knew it now, like I could have not been able to launch this while being at this, meeting all day. And so it's just so interesting how the Lord was so timely, even though I felt like, God, why are you so quiet? Why do I not hear your voice? And that's something I've really learned is like, God's hand is through all of it, even when it feels like, oh my gosh, nothing's like happening, or it feels stagnant, or it feels like he's quiet. His hand was constantly intervening and doing what it needed to, and times I didn't even see it. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we ever really see it until it
No.
makes sense. You know, it's like in the
Absolutely.
moment things are hard or you like learn these really hard lessons and
Yeah.
then later on you're like, "Oh, that all makes sense now."
Yes. Absolutely.
And then it's important that we tell our story because ultimately people can learn and people can be inspired through the stories that we tell based on the experiences we've had. And the people that relate, even if it's not the same experience, but they can relate in the way that we're feeling or what we've learned. I've learned through podcasting now that we are all way more similar than we know. We're all very different, but we're also very similar. We have a lot
Absolutely.
of similar experiences. And that's one of them is doors close and it's hard. We get the no, but then it's because there maybe God is making space for something that's bigger.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's beautiful. Is there anything else from your perspective that you think people misunderstand about calling and purpose?
I think oftentimes people think calling and purpose is a one-shot thing, and they think it's like, okay, well, if I get to this one thing, or if I get to this one person, or if I just reach this one thing. And I think what's really beautiful about calling and purpose with the Lord is it's kind of honestly ever changing. I think for me, like stepping into college, my calling and purpose look different than it does now. And ultimately, I believe all of our callings as individuals of the Lord is to truly love God and love others. And that's truly what it's all based out of, is like, how are you living your life and how are you treating people? People oftentimes forget what you do and your actions, but they'll always remember how you make them feel. And that's something that I constantly go off of, because it's like, at the end of the day, my calling and purpose may change. It may look different and it might look unconventional. A lot of times God puts us in spots that are very you think you're unqualified for, you think you're not good enough for, and that's oftentimes when you know you're in the right spot. That's what I had to learn the hard way too. But I think what's beautiful about it is it's constantly changing, and I think that the Lord will constantly put you in different rooms and different places that you don't feel qualified for. And it's like you think, oh, my calling, I've got to be really good at it, or I've got to have a degree to back it, or I've got to have this. But that's honestly not usually true, because I notice what God's taught me in Love Gives is the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is not because I'm the best person at marketing. It's not because I know how to deal with SKU numbers and manufacturers and that's it's not about that at all. But instead it's about God wanted my heart posture behind it. God wanted me, even though I don't feel qualified and I still struggle with that, God wanted me to do it. Not because of anything I have that backs me up, but because he wanted me. And so I think oftentimes people think that it's based on their ability or their assets or what they have, but it's truly based on God wants you in that, because there's somebody or there's something that is going to inspire the world or change the world through that.
I love that. So what have you learned about courage that maybe most people aren't talking about?
I think courage is something that's so hard. I think there's so many different ways to take courage, but I think a big one is it's like not being afraid to fail or afraid of what people think. I think oftentimes relying on the Lord in circumstances of courage is so important, because that's when you grow. That's when you change. That's when you evolve into really who God has called you to be. And I know there were moments for me, like I'll never forget we first launched Slim Gives, and I was like, oh my gosh, but like everybody I know is gonna see this. Like, what if this like tumbles to the ground? I'm like, that's so embarrassing. And I had to go, okay, but it's not about me. And I have to just be courageous in the fact of, okay, God has put me in this position to do this. Regardless of if it fails or not, it's not my fault. And it's not truly my identity. It's like it may fail, it might not. God may bless it or he may not. But he wanted me to do it anyway. And I think there are so many times that we think that it only is like true courage if it goes well or this or whatever. But truly sitting with it going, okay, but God called me to do it. So I'm going to do it regardless if it fails or not. And I think people miss that sometimes and think, well, if God didn't bless it, like I must have heard him wrong, or I must have, interpreted it wrong or thought the wrong thing. But it's like, that's just not the reality. sometimes God's closed the door, like we mentioned earlier, to open a new one and to truly continue to walk out that calling in Him.
He has to teach you in order to be ready for the bigger mission. Because if you don't maybe fall down on the smaller missions, then it's hard for you to accept the bigger mission. So I think that's beautiful. Also, I'm very curious, maybe you know, but I definitely don't. I'm curious how many times it says do not fear in the Bible.
So many. I think it's something like 200. It's ridiculous.
I did one Bible study and I really want to do more. I know you've done some Bible study work as well. But just learning the word, it's so inspiring. So actually at first I thought the Bible was a very scary book because it kind of is, but it's also such an inspirational book and it is a way of living, which is why I built Inspired Authority Bible Inspired, because it is such an inspiring book that tells you exactly how to live.
Absolutely.
So you talked a lot about not worrying about what other people think. What can people do to break free of the expectations that other people have of them?
I think the biggest thing, and I know you talk about this a lot on your podcast, is truly finding your identity. And I think people throw that word around a lot, but God has a specific identity for you and something that He has specifically called you for. And I think when you operate out of that, those things begin to fall in the back because you're like, okay, but God's called me this. God says this about me. Because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter what people say about you. Who you are and who your heart is truly your identity. And I think I'm actually doing a book on it right now. It's called Living Fearless. And it basically goes through like how to find your identity in Jesus. And so when I came across your page, I was like, this is so beautiful because that is how we are supposed to live. And your identity might look different than mine, or this person or that person. But the beautiful part about it is when we operate out of that, we're not worried about fear of man. We're not worried about failure. We're not worried about all these different things that the world entangles us in. And we don't live in a place of anxiety, of fear, of shame, but instead we live out of doesn't matter because God has called me to it and God has rooted me in this. And I think truly walking in my identity means finding who God's called me to be and what has He given me a heart for, because that is truly what's going to propel me forward. And for me, it was really thinking about my tasks in my life and going, okay, at such a time as this, God had really led me through a journey of loving Him fully and thoughtfully, truly at the core of me. And then on top of that, loving who He's called me to be. I struggled a lot with that in high school with just the way I look and this and that. And God took me through such a hard journey of finding that, but it's led me to what I'm doing today. And that's what propels me forward because it doesn't matter what people say or what people think about me, because at the end of the day, I'm honoring the Lord, not by trying to be the best Christian or, oh, look at Gracie knows scripture, but truly going, I want to be vulnerable and honest with people about my struggles and what I've gone through, but ultimately turning it to the Lord and going, but He's called me here. And this is what He's called me and purposed me to do.
It's so beautiful for you to talk about the importance of doing the identity work.
It's so important.
The reality is most women, maybe like that, once they hit like 35 is when we see their identity shift or break down, or because they hadn't done the work on who they are, they get stuck in so many other people's expectations that it gets to a point where burnout, and then
Absolutely.
breakthrough, hopefully, when they figure out, okay, wait, I was just going down the wrong path, find themselves through, whether it be coaching, whether it be through God, like there's many different ways for you to find your identity. But the reality is most people don't work on it until it's like kind of not until it hurts, until there's pain, until there's burnout, until there's something that forces you to figure out who really am I and what do I want in this life and what am I here to actually do to build. At the end of the day, it's so important to start working on that early. So I'm so happy that you shared that. Gracie, are there any other habits or things that you do to continue to build who you are on the inside so that when you do walk out into the world, you are just confident with who you are?
Yeah, I actually, the first thing that came to my mind was something I've been doing for like years, which is, this is silly, but I literally stand at the mirror in the morning after I tell Jesus and I speak truth over myself. Like I literally look at myself and go, I'm enough. God's called me to what I'm doing. I am highly favored and anointed. I'm healthy. I'm loved. I'm seen. I'm capable. I know it sounds silly, but I'm telling you, like, that really had changed my life and still does because after doing a lot of identity work, I realized my core weakness is thinking I'm not good enough. And so, how am I going to reorient that? Because if I live out of that posture, I'm going to be stressed. I'm going to be anxious. I'm going to be living in shame that I'm not good enough. I didn't do enough. I'm not a good enough marketer or this or whatever it may be. But when I look at myself in the mirror and believe, truly go, God, this is what you called me, I start to believe it. So when I was beginning of college, I really struggled with my body image. I really struggled with it. I'd struggled with it through high school. And I kind of got to my wit's end. I went to counseling. That kind of didn't work because I truly believed it was a spiritual battle for me, that I had to win in my mind because that was not who God had called me to be. And so I remember literally being like a sophomore in college, and I would stand in the mirror and I would say, no, I'm healthy. I have a healthy relationship with food. I would say all these different things. And it sounds so silly, but I'm telling you, I came to a place of freedom. I came to a place of freedom of that's not who I am anymore. I'm going to live in God's identity and calling over my life. And immediately my life started to change because I stopped thinking about myself and I started going, okay, I'm going to use what God's given me to push out further of who Jesus is. And so I'm really trying to do the same thing in my identity even further in what I do and just like what I'm walking in today, because the world can say so many things and you can look online, you're always going to be less than, or there's always going to be somebody better than you. And so it's like, how am I going to go, okay, Lord, who am I? And so that's been a big thing for me is literally looking at myself in the mirror, writing it down and going, I'm enough, I'm capable, I'm called, and all the things you need to say to yourself. I'm telling you, when it's rooted in Jesus, your life will change. Your life will change.
Your brain also believes what you tell it.
Absolutely.
It's a mental, it's mental. I want to say game, but it's not a game. Your mentality and how you wake up and how you approach life is how you actually will perform. So I just recently watched something that was people that had the same job, but the story that they tell themselves every morning about what they do was so fundamentally different that the way that they showed up and the energy that they gave off and the accomplishments and the success in their mind was so different because one was saying, oh, it was a janitor example. Oh, I'm just a janitor. And the other person was like, oh, I make people have the best day ever, because that was like their mentality about it. It's the same course of work, but the story that they tell themselves is so fundamentally different. And how you show up and what you tell your brain is what it believes, and how you actually do, the energy that you give off and the energy that you feel, and all of that is critical. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I actually will admit I don't do affirmations, but maybe I should start because I got full body chills when you're talking about how it's changed your life. And I think everyone should look into doing some form of that for themselves.
Yeah, genuinely. I mean, I thought it was silly too, but I was like, honestly, when I started, when I started saying those things, you do believe it. Your brain starts to believe it and starts to act like that. Because when you're constantly saying, well, I'm not good enough, I'm not this, you're not going to be good enough. Like, genuinely. And I've had to go, Gracie, wake up. No, we're not saying that anymore. Because it's like the same tapes continue to roll, and Satan will constantly try to use that stuff again and again. Like, he's not very crafty. Like, he will say literally the same thing every single day if that's what gets you. And he did that to me, and he still sometimes does. So I'm fully gonna admit that. But yeah, saying it really, really has changed my life. And just honestly rebuking the enemy, being like, no, like that is not me. Nope. Like I literally do that in the car, anywhere. I'm driving somewhere, I'm editing a video. I don't even know. I'm constantly going, nope, that's not me. That's not who God's called me to be. Like, I'm supposed to be doing this. And like telling yourself that helps you and like almost like gives you the fuel to go.
We talked a lot about some of the struggles that you went through and where you're at now and all of the things you're doing to continue to drive yourself forward. What would your younger self be most proud about in who you are today?
Oh my gosh, I love this question. I actually teared up when I read this question because honestly, like I was not anywhere. And I think what's so beautiful about it is God like truly changed my life. And he has been so graceful in the way that he's done that. It wasn't like a quick change, it wasn't fast, and it will continue throughout the rest of my life. But I think my youngest self would be most proud of the way that I'm living for Jesus, but also just walking in freedom of not caring what people think, not stuck to the horrible things I used to say about myself, the way I used to look at myself in the mirror, all these things that used to just literally entangle me in lies. Like, I don't live that life anymore. Like, I genuinely don't. And I think that is something that my younger self, I wish I could just give her a hug because I just had such a horrible, like, mental game and I would talk so down on myself and this and that. But above all, just not caring what people think too. Just really walking in God's called me to what he's called me to, and that's enough.
If someone is feeling called to do something, but they have fear and they have doubt and they don't have a support system, what's something that you would say to them?
I would say lean into what God's telling you and go back on the last thing he said to you. I think for me, I had to know that God spoke to me, and I had to know that I know that I know that I was doing the right thing. And for me, God didn't speak in an audible voice. It's usually just an inkling in my spirit. And for me, and I would say this to anybody that feels that way, going back to what God has said to you, because that is the only thing that will propel you forward when you believe in your heart that God has called you to something greater. And a lot of times it's like, well, how do I hear from God? How do I this? And God's not going to write it in the clouds. He might not even speak audibly to you, but when you feel peace and you feel that there are divine doors opening that don't really make sense, and don't confuse being scared to do something with not supposed to do it. Because a lot of times people get so caught up in the fear of doing something that they never cross into the blessing, ever. So many people get stuck to that. But when you go, okay, I'm fearful, but I have peace. But there's something inside me that says I need to do this. That's when you know the Lord is calling you to something bigger, because you will always be fearful. You'll always feel not good enough. But when you go, okay, but I feel like this is something I'm supposed to do, and it aligns with God's word, then you have to go do it, even if it's scary, because that is truly God's heart for you.
I love that. So if there's one decision that someone could make today to get closer to who they're supposed to become, what might that decision be? Like, is there any recommendations or advice you would have for those people to get closer to who they should be?
I think a big one is when you really learn who God is, you really learn about his heart for you, and you learn about his love and the way that he just operates and cares about you. That's when you start to begin to understand who he's created you to be. Because when you have this vision of a heavenly father that doesn't come at you with condemnation or shame, but comes at you with love and grace and wisdom, you start to live differently, because you get to go, okay, well, I'm a child of that. So how am I going to live if that is my Father in heaven? And to any of you that has a hard relationship with your dad or has a broken family, I really am just praying over you, because I really believe that like God's heart for you, he is your Father. And when you start to go, okay, might look different than my earthly parents, might look different than, where I am right now. But if I look to, okay, this is who God is and he is my Father, ultimately, you start to love who he's created you to be, and you start to walk in the freedom of that.
I love that. This has been such an incredible episode, and everything that you've shared has been so inspiring. So, Gracie, you should be so proud of everything that you've built and everything that you're doing today to serve your purpose in this world. Is there anything that's next? Anything that you do dream of beyond Love Gives? Anything else that you're hoping to accomplish?
Yeah, honestly, I don't really know. I'm honestly, like, with anything in my life, I just have hands open. I'm like, I'm gonna hold it loosely, like, whatever the Lord has for me. But I just have such a heart for just, like I just have such a heart for people. I don't know, I think so much like, I've gone through a lot of struggle, and I know we all have as individuals, but I just truly want what I've gone through to inspire somebody else, whether that be my hurt, my pain, or just really walking in what God's called me to do. I think that's such a scary thing that we talked about. But yeah, I think that's honestly, yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you again, Gracie, for being here. And thank you all for tuning in. Again, we have such incredible conversations on this podcast. And if this resonated with you, please share it with a friend, somebody that needs to hear it. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. We want to hear from you. If something specifically resonated, let us know so we can continue to lean into that. But again, until next time, authority builders, I can't wait to see you soon. And Gracie, thank you again for being here today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Take care, everyone.
Bye.